My name doesn't matter anymore. Out here in the burned jungles of a moon nobody bothered to name properly, I was just Sarge to the 4 people left in my squad. We were soldiers once, part of a much bigger unit, until the alliance of alien empires decided humanity was too dangerous to exist. They didn't declare war on our planet. They did something stranger. They picked one small squad, mine, and declared a hunt. It started with a broadcast. A cold voice speaking in a dozen languages, human and alien alike, told the galaxy that 5 humans would be tracked down by the finest hunters from a dozen worlds. It was meant to be a lesson, a warning to every human colony watching. Surrender now or this is what waits for you. I remember laughing when I heard it. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. Laughing kept my hands from shaking. There were 5 of us. Mika, our medic, calm even when the world was falling apart. Ortiz, who never stopped talking even when he probably should have. Reyes, quiet and steady, the best shot I ever served with. Chen, young, nervous, but braver than she gave herself credit for. And me, trying to hold it all together and pretend I knew what I was doing. We had been cut off from extraction 3 days before the announcement. No backup was coming. No ships would answer our calls. The Alliance had seen to that. All we had was what we carried. Rifles, a few days of rations, medical supplies, and a moon full of jungle that didn't care if we lived or died. The first hunter came at night. I heard it before I saw it, a soft click of claws on wet stone. Reyes tapped my shoulder twice, our signal for movement nearby. We didn't panic. We had trained for ambushes our whole lives, just never one where we were the ones being hunted for sport. The creature was tall, covered in dark scales that seemed to soak up the moonlight instead of reflecting it. It moved like something built only for killing, silent and patient. It expected an easy human, someone who would run in fear. Instead, Ortiz threw a can of rations at a tree behind it. The hunter's head snapped toward the sound just for a second. That second was all Reyes needed. A single shot to the shoulder, not to kill, just to disable. The hunter dropped, snarling, and Mika moved in fast to secure it before it recovered. We didn't kill it. We tied it up and left it for its own people to find, alive but humiliated. It wasn't mercy exactly. It was a message. We wanted them to know we weren't the desperate animals they expected. That first night changed something in me. I realized we weren't just trying to survive anymore. We were trying to prove a point. Word must have spread fast, because the next day brought 2 hunters instead of 1. These moved as a pair, communicating through clicks and whistles, working together like a single mind split into 2 bodies. They were smarter than the first, more careful. We split into 2 teams. Chen and Ortiz took the high ground, while Reyes, Mika, and I moved low, using the thick roots and fallen trees as cover. It felt like chess, except every wrong move could cost someone their life. The hunters tried to flank us, moving through the trees above, but Chen spotted the shift in leaves before they even got close. She whispered the warning, hands trembling slightly but her voice steady. That steadiness saved us. We repositioned just in time, and when the hunters dropped down expecting an easy strike, they found us already waiting. It wasn't clean and it wasn't easy. There was shouting, gunfire, the smell of smoke and burned earth. When it was over, one hunter had fled, wounded, into the jungle. The other surrendered, dropping its weapon and raising its hands in a gesture that looked almost human. We let it go too. Not because we were kind, though I'd like to think we were, but because word of humans who didn't fight like animals, who fought with discipline and restraint even in a fight for their lives, was worth more than another body count. By the 3rd day, the jungle felt different, quieter, like even the plants and insects knew something big was happening. We rationed our food carefully, took turns sleeping in short bursts, and kept moving to avoid leaving a pattern the hunters could predict. Mika treated a cut on my arm that night, her hands quick and practiced despite the shake in her fingers. "You know they're not going to stop sending people," she said quietly. "Not until they save face or one of us dies." "Then we make sure it's the other option," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She smiled just a little. "That's the spirit, Sarge." Reyes kept watch, silent as always, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line. Chen sat close to Ortiz, who had finally stopped talking for once, both of them staring into the dark like they were waiting for it to blink first. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about home, about the people who might be watching this hunt from safety, wondering if we'd become another statistic, another reason to give up. I promised myself we wouldn't be. The next hunters who came were different. Bigger, faster, covered in natural armor that shimmered faintly even in shadow. These weren't ordinary trackers. These were champions sent because the first attempts had failed and embarrassed whoever was running this twisted game. We saw them coming from a ridge above the tree line, three shapes moving with terrifying grace through the jungle below. Even from a distance, I could tell these three were a different level of threat entirely. We didn't run. Running would have been the easy choice, but it also would have meant losing ground we couldn't afford to lose. Instead, we set traps. Simple things built from what we had, tripwires connected to flares, pits covered with branches, decoy trails leading nowhere. It worked better than I expected. One hunter fell into a pit and injured its leg badly enough to be out of the fight. Another triggered a flare that blinded it just long enough for Rays to land a shot that ended its part in the hunt, without ending its life. The third one, though, was smarter. It avoided every trap, moving with a kind of caution that told me it had learned from watching its companions fail. This one came straight for me. I won't lie and say I wasn't afraid. Fear was the only honest thing left in a moment like that. It moved fast, faster than anything should be able to move in that thick jungle undergrowth, and for a few seconds all I could do was react, blocking and dodging, trying to buy myself enough time to think. Then I remembered something simple. These hunters were trained to fight prey that ran or froze. They weren't trained for someone who fought back with everything they had, who used the jungle itself as a weapon instead of an obstacle. I grabbed a thick vine hanging from a tree, swung hard, and used the momentum to throw myself out of the hunter's reach just as it lunged. It missed, crashing into the underbrush, and before it could recover, Chen and Ortiz arrived from the side, forcing it to choose between fighting all three of us or retreating. It retreated. That night, word must have spread through whatever network these hunters used to communicate. I don't know exactly how they talked to each other across such distances, but somehow, by morning, things had changed. The number of hunters coming for us started to shrink instead of grow. Mika was the one who noticed it first. "They're pulling back," she said, studying the tracks we'd been monitoring near our camp. "Not all of them, but enough that it's obvious." "They're scared," Ortiz said, grinning for the first time in what felt like days. "The great galactic hunters are scared of 5 tired humans with sticks and cans of beans." "We still have guns, Ortiz," Rays pointed out. "Details," Ortiz said, waving a hand. Even Chen managed a small laugh at that, the first real laugh I'd heard from any of us since this whole nightmare began. It felt good, like a small piece of normal in the middle of chaos. But the hunt wasn't over yet. Whoever was in charge of this twisted game wasn't ready to admit defeat. On what I think was our 5th day, though by then time had started blurring together, they sent their best. I heard about this hunter through whispered reputation carried by the ones we'd defeated and released. A champion among champions, undefeated across 100 worlds, sent specifically to end the embarrassment we had caused. It arrived alone, which told me everything I needed to know about how confident it was. We met in a clearing, more by accident than plan. I had gone ahead to scout while the others rested, and there it was, waiting like it had known exactly where I would be. It was massive, easily twice my size, with markings across its body that looked almost like trophies, symbols of past hunts it had won. For a long moment, neither of us moved. It studied me the way a predator studies prey it respects, and I studied it back, trying not to show the fear crawling up my spine. "You," it said, in halting but understandable words through a translator device strapped to its chest, "have caused much trouble." "Wasn't trying to cause trouble," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, "just trying to survive." "Survival is not the game," it replied, "the game is the hunt." "Then maybe you're playing the wrong game," I said. It didn't like that answer. The fight that followed was the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. It was fast despite its size, strong in ways that made every block I managed feel like hitting a wall. I took hits that would have ended the fight against anyone else, and I gave hits that seemed to barely slow it down. But here's the thing about being human that I don't think the Alliance ever understood. We don't need to be the strongest or the fastest. We just need to refuse to stop. Every time I got knocked down, I got back up. Every time it thought it had won, I found one more way to keep fighting. Somewhere in the middle of that fight, I stopped thinking about winning and started thinking about my squad, about home, about every human who might be watching and wondering if we were worth believing in. That thought gave me something the hunter didn't expect: patience. I let it wear itself out, dodging more than attacking, using the terrain, using everything I had learned from days of surviving this jungle. When the moment finally came, when it made one small mistake in its exhaustion, I took it. Not a killing blow, but enough to end the fight, leaving it defeated but alive on the jungle floor. It looked up at me, breathing hard, something like confusion in its eyes. "Why do you not finish it?" "Because that's not who we are," I said, meaning every word. Whatever happened after that spread through their networks faster than anything before it. By the time my squad and I made it back to a clearing where we hoped an old emergency beacon might still work, the remaining hunters weren't hunting anymore. They were retreating. We found the last few near the edge of what had once been their forward base, a small camp hidden in the rocks. They weren't preparing another ambush. They were packing up, clearly ready to leave. When they saw us approaching, weapons ready but not raised, something shifted in their body language. Fear, unmistakable and raw. One of them, the one who seemed to be in charge, stepped forward slowly, hands empty and raised. Through a translator, it spoke words I never expected to hear from creatures who had been sent to end us. "We ask for mercy," it said. "The hunt has failed. We do not wish to continue this." I looked at my squad. Mika's eyes were tired but steady. Reyes gave a small nod. Chen looked almost relieved. Ortiz, for once, said nothing at all. I could have ended it there in a way that matched the violence they had brought to us. Part of me even wanted to, thinking about every moment of fear these past days had given us. But that wasn't the message I wanted to send. "Go home," I said. "Tell your people what happened here. Tell them humanity isn't something to be hunted." They left without another word, moving faster than I'd seen any of them move before, except this time it wasn't the grace of predators. It was the hurried steps of creatures who had learned, painfully, that they weren't as powerful as they believed. Extraction finally arrived 2 days later, a small ship breaking atmosphere after picking up our old beacon signal. I don't know exactly what happened after that, not right away. But within a few weeks, news filtered back to us that the Alliance had quietly ended the extermination order. Not because they suddenly respected humanity, but because they were afraid of what might happen if they sent more hunters and lost again. Looking back now, I think about that first broadcast, the cold voice announcing our hunt as a warning to the rest of humanity. They wanted to send a message, something to make every human colony feel small and afraid. Instead, we sent one back. We were never the endangered species they thought we were. We were something they hadn't accounted for, people who refused to give up, who fought not for glory or trophies, but for each other and for the simple right to keep existing. Mika still checks in with me sometimes, and Ortiz never really stopped talking, even years later. Reyes remains as quiet and steady as ever, and Chen, who once trembled before every encounter, now trains new recruits with a calm confidence I still find remarkable. As for me, I think about those days often, not with pride exactly, but with a quiet understanding of what we proved. The galaxy sent hunters to remind humanity of its place. What they found instead was a squad that refused to be prey, that turned fear into strength, and that days later left even the fiercest hunters begging not for victory, but for mercy.